to ask the Minister if you can talk to us a little bit about the Affordable Childcare Scheme and the status of it at the moment, Minister.
On the 11th of March, I launched the National Childcare Scheme, our pathway to truly accessible, affordable, quality childcare. The scheme is scheduled to open to applications later this year in October to November. We are making progress in preparing for the scheme's introduction. Following the enactment of the Childcare Support Act 2018, detailed secondary legislation and policy guidelines are now being finalized. Intensive work is also progressing on the scheme's supporting IT system. A national communications campaign on the scheme is underway to ensure that providers and parents are ready for the scheme when it opens. This involves a sequenced program of information, training and supports. Key elements of the campaign include the launch of a new website, www.ncs.gov.ie, the distribution to date of 5,000 information packs, 50,000 parent booklets to providers, libraries, government offices and other key stakeholders, and a major nationwide training program for providers, offering over 12,500 training places across 600 venues, and I'm happy to report that there is very strong interest in the website, the parent booklets and the training. In September and October, then, my department will run a large information campaign across a number of media channels to ensure there is full awareness among parents of their potential entitlements under the new scheme. The agreement for service providers to participate in the scheme will be published shortly and will be available for signing in June. And to support the providers who enter into the contract for the scheme, I recently announced capital funding of €3 million for the provision of ICT software and hardware for providers. Individual services will receive between €500 and €2,000, depending on the number of children who are actively registered on one of the department's childcare programs. Applications for this funding will also open in June, and I will continue to work intensively to deliver this landmark scheme, which will alter the landscape of childcare in Ireland. It will support families, it will provide a sustainable platform for investment, and crucially allow us to continue to invest in children.
Thank you very much, Minister. Well, firstly, can I start on a positive note? It was great to see in County Cavan last week for the Arts Festival, the second Arts Festival that the county has had. And I know Kim McCafferty was delighted along with the other volunteers there. And it was great to see you down there and taking an interest in that area of things. Back to the Affordable Childcare Scheme, Minister. It is likely that the demand for the childcare, that the single Affordable Childcare Scheme is likely to create families receiving very low levels of subsidy may be worse off than they were before the introduction of the single affordable childcare scheme. Childcare costs are crippling high in this country, Minister, as you know, and the average household spends about 35% of their income on childcare costs alone. The average cost of full-time early years place in Ireland is about €167 per week per child, and goes up to €214 in certain parts of the country as well. It's a huge figure and a huge chunk out of parents' income. And of course, when we think of the astronomical burdens on families with housing and rent and electricity and all of that, I'm just asking if you could refer a little bit to that for the low-income families. How are they actually going to cope with this?
Thank you, Deputy. I do appreciate the different numbers that you're providing. I am aware, of the challenge in relation to the affordability of childcare for parents, probably more than most people, which is why I have worked intensively over the past 3 years to ensure that we have such a significant increase of investment for families. That is not to say that it's still that the fees or that the costs to families are still as affordable as we would like, which is why, therefore, with the establishment of the National Childcare Scheme coming from being provided the services and the subsidies in a new way from October and November on, it'll make it much easier for future governments to make investment in terms of in streamlined ways and in targeted ways in future years, particularly, and as you asked the question, especially for those families who are on the lowest incomes in order to receive the highest subsidies. So I am aware of what you're saying, but that is why we've made such intensive efforts and have increased the investment 117% over the past 4 years.
You did refer to the ICT requirements and infrastructure that has to be in place for this scheme to come into play in September. So can I ask you, will the childcare sector receive adequate time and training to use the scheme, or the system rather, and will childcare providers be compensated for the non-contact hours that they will have? Minister, it is no surprise that there are certain parts of the country that don't have broadband at the moment, and my own constituency of Cavan and Monaghan is one of those particular parts that would be badly affected, where there would be black spots. And I'm just wondering, what provision are you going to have in place for childcare providers to be able to deal with this ICT system, and to ask you, are you confident that the system will be up and running, and that the trainers will be adequately have the adequate time to train, and also, as I said, about the non-contact hours, are they going to be compensated for that?
I am confident that the training it is being provided, as I've indicated. It will continue to be provided. We're also providing monies to those childcare providers who sign up to the contract with the National Childcare Scheme, as I've already indicated as well, to receive the appropriate software, hardware to support them in terms of the use of it. But I do think there's a lot of training going on currently, and that I feel confident that they will be ready. That's not to say that some might not, but I think generally speaking, there's a huge and intense effort and an awareness that that's what needs to go on. So I think in relation to your first set of questions, secondly, Deputy, as I think you're aware, over the past couple of years, I have put in place and increased the amount of what we call now program support payments, which we used to call non-contact time payments for providers, by way of recognition of the amount of time that is required in order to do the administration. Ultimately, that time should go down in relation to the National Childcare Scheme that we are actually implementing.